What happens when you step into the spotlight and openly share something as intimate as your orgasmic birth experiences? In this episode, we'll explore the journey of breaking the silence, what inspired it, how people reacted, and the ripple effect it created. We'll also dive into practical ways to bring more connection, intimacy, and pleasure into birth and parenting, and why it's so important to challenge the taboos around orgasmic birth. How can we shift the narrative and normalize pleasure in birth? Let's talk about it. Hi, I'm Debra Pascali-Bonaro, founder and director of Orgasmic Birth and host of the Orgasmic Birth podcast. I am so excited today to welcome my guest, Lovisa Dahl. She is one of our orgasmic birth practitioners, a TEDx speaker, a writer, a mentor, and a grateful mother of 3 children. Her own births have been deeply empowering, and she has experienced ecstatic states and physical orgasms during labor, applying the same secrets that she has now shared with millions of people across the globe. She is creator of the trailblazing Love Birth method, leading women to embodied birth using relaxation and pleasure as sacred tools. Through her programs and courses, you're invited into deep embodied connection with yourself, a sacred space where you can reclaim your sexuality as sacred and discover yourself as the source of love. Welcome, Lovisa. I've been waiting for today to reconnect with you again.
Thank you so much, Deborah, for having me again. And I've also been waiting so much for today. I'm so happy to be here and talk about this. And yeah.
Yeah. And so for those that don't know, Lovisa did an earlier podcast and we'll add that link in. But for people just listening, can you give us just a short overview of your births, which also kind of began this movement that you're creating?
Yes, yes. So I have had 3 births, and the first birth was, all of them were home births. And the first birth was like a very empowering experience. I had heard about Orgasmic Birth, the documentary, your documentary, before, but I didn't really think like I could experience that. I thought someone else, but I was very intrigued by it. And I didn't have an orgasmic birth that first time, but it was very empowering, very loving setting, very, you know, it was a beautiful experience, challenging as well. And then when I moved into my second pregnancy, I thought, what if I could have an orgasmic birth? Why not, you know? So I started to prepare myself, like investigating how could I best prepare my body and my mind to be able to have this kind of experience. And it turned out to be a very, again, super empowering experience. And it was like a cosmic orgasm, like an energetic orgasm, maybe. And I think I've never felt so, deeply rooted in my intuition and in my pleasure. Also, I used a lot of pleasure in my preparation, mostly like sensual pleasure, a little bit sexual pleasure, but that when I got pregnant the third time, which is the birth that I came on to the podcast to tell that story. So you can listen to that if you want the full story. But that was a very, very much an orgasmic birth in the sense that I had physical orgasms rolling through my body. And I also had a female ejaculation at the end, right when my son was born. And the whole, I was preparing so much with pleasure. I felt like, actually after the birth, I felt like I wasn't only having orgasms, I was an orgasmic being. I was this orgasmic state. And I mean, that is still living in me, although it's not as potent as it was straight after birth, because then I was like, my whole pleasure body was just open. So
Yeah. So beautiful. And I love your words, that orgasmic state where you're just kind of one, right?
yes.
Yeah. So having had these experiences, what inspired you to openly share about this? And as we said in your bio, you recently did a TEDx talk that I was just so jumping up and down listening to. I hope all our listeners will go over, follow the link in the show notes there. But what inspired you and what was that like?
Yeah, it wasn't what do you say? It wasn't certain that I would share about my orgasmic births at first. After that second birth where I had these like ecstatic orgasmic states, I felt shy to speak about it. So at first I only mentioned it to like a few people, or I would tell my birth, but I would leave out the juicy parts. uh, because I felt it was like two things that stopped me. And one was that there was a shame in me, like, how can I have this like orgasmic experience when giving birth? Like there was a deep shame. So it wasn't logical. It was deeper than that, way deeper than that. And the second reason was that I didn't want to make other women feel bad or feel jealous. And it's such a big one. That's such a big
Such a
one.
big one.
Mm. So, but with time, I spoke more and more openly about it, but still like within the the closed community, my friends and so on. And then when I got pregnant, that for my third pregnancy, I actually had a moment with the universe, with the goddess, where I said, okay, I am invoking another orgasmic birth. And if I have one, I promise I will share this with the entire world because I felt so deeply how important it is. And I knew that that shame that lived in me, that had, like, I had to get rid of that and share this because it needs to reach the masses. So I worked a lot with understanding what that shame was about, understanding the taboo, and uh, and then I had that super orgasmic birth experience, and then there was really no way back. It was only a way forward. And I started speaking about it first in my own social media, and then I had this idea that I wanted to I wanted to do a TEDx about it. And sometimes, like, when you have this wish and it's aligned and it's for the greatest good of all, then things just fall on your lap. And that's how it all played out. One day I got invited to do an audition, and a few weeks later I got the information that I passed the audition and that they wanted me to come and do the TEDx. And so I did. And it was, a little scary to walk out of that stage, but I felt so deeply embodied when I did it, because like, only now when I speak about it, it's like my whole body is just burning because it's so important that we break the taboo and we speak about birth in more ways than just painful and horrible and all of these stories that we are marinated in.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing your own journey. our documentary is called The Best Kept Secret as the subheader because so many people have told me they've had an orgasmic experience from the energy, the love, the joy, and some physical orgasms. But so many have even said some didn't even tell their partner, their best friend, right? Because of this internalized shame. And of course, many, as you said, because we want to honor everybody's story and don't want anyone to feel bad. So now that you put it out there, and certainly we've been doing that too, because I feel it's important everyone has the information to make the best choices for them. What have been some of the responses? How do you feel about what you're receiving?
Yes, one interesting thing is that after this, after I started speaking about it, there is a lot of women that approach me and they tell me, "Oh my God, I had that experience and I've never told anyone because I felt like I was so weird." And it kind of breaks my heart in one way, and it also fills my heart because finally they get to validate their experience and understand that this is actually a natural part of birth. I think that birth was intended to be, well, I mean, to have pleasure as part of the birth journey. It just makes sense if you look at the female anatomy, the genitals. It's like the clitoris is hugging the whole vaginal canal. So why wouldn't yeah, it just makes sense. Yeah. Um, yeah,
And
sorry.
so, and I agree with you, right? The anatomy of pleasure is there, and the clitoris's only role is pleasure, right? So how did we take that role out of the role of birth? But
Yeah.
as you put a TEDx talk out there, that's stunning. What are some of the other responses you're getting back? And I'm glad that people are saying, they didn't tell anyone, but they're telling you, but is it starting a broader conversation?
Yeah, and it was interesting also what happened in the same time, and it wasn't because of the TEDx actually. It was just by, I don't know, the universe again, whatever. There
Yes.
was a UK journalist who approached me, and she found me on Instagram. And so she asked if she could write an article about my birth experiences and what I do. And I said, sure. And it was for The Sun, for the Sunday magazine Fabulous that comes with The Sun. So it's like this huge magazine that is read by a million people. And I wasn't even aware what it was, so I had to ask a friend, like, what is this? What is this newspaper? But anyway, so that came like in the same time, and when the article came out, that's kind of when it boomed. And I was a few days later, I was approached by This Morning, which is like the biggest, what do you say, morning show in the UK.
Yes.
And we're talking mainstream media. So this is not like the little obscure television channel. This is like what everyone watches in the morning. And that they invited me, they flew me over to London to sit on the couch and speak about my orgasmic births. And that to me is telling me that the world is ready to hear this and to change the narrative of birth. So it was a very interesting and very fun experience, of course, to do that. But what was so exciting was that afterwards there were birth workers, like so many birth workers that reached out and said, "Oh my God, we have to lift this topic. We want to talk about this." And all of a sudden there was this grassroots movement happening. And oh, I get chills now that I talk about it. And you know, I hadn't planned to lead a movement, although I had actually written in one place in my website where I explain what I do and explaining my Love Birth portal. I had written that the Love Birth portal is more than a course. It is a movement to change the birth narrative.
Yeah.
So maybe it was, you know, already there inside of me, but I hadn't really like logically understood what it was that I was doing until I saw the ripple effects and people started approaching me.
Yeah. It's so fantastic, right? People are so ready right now because we know that our current system has good intentions and certainly can save lives, but our overuse, right, is also putting people at risk, and we're missing these essential elements of that love and connection and pleasure. So, for people that are listening that might be pregnant, can you give them what are some practical ways they could start preparing for an orgasmic, love-based birth?
Yes, I always say incorporate pleasure every day in your life. And that, like, often when we think about pleasure, we think about sex. And that is part of it, making love to yourself or your partner. But that is just a little small part of what pleasure is. It is a lot about being present with your senses. So slowing down, you know, even if it's drinking a cup of tea, do it with presence. Feel, you know, feel the warmth of that tea entering your body. Like smell it. So it's being in touch with your senses. That is the best preparation in the world. Because also that way, when we lean into pleasure in our everyday life, we teach our bodies that pleasure is safe. Because a lot of the time our bodies don't feel safe with pleasure. It's easy to say like, yeah, I can have as much pleasure as possible. There is no limit. But really, when you start exploring that, usually or always we have a stop. It's like I can experience this much pleasure, and then I cannot anymore, and I have to. And if you take it to the sexual, like when we have sex, we cannot hold the pleasure. We cannot hold the bigness, the vastness of the pleasure, and just let it be in our every cell of our body. We have to go to a clitoral orgasm instead of just holding that orgasmic state. So that is also something you can do. You can practice how you can expand your pleasure container, expand your pleasure body. That is also very helpful.
So beautiful. I like that. Expand your pleasure body. That sounds, I can just feel the tingling as you're talking. And I feel like it's important to come back to even you were held back initially from some shame to share. And I know that many people feel shame even to dive into pleasure, to allow themselves there. Do you have any tips for someone that's going, I so want this, but they can feel that internal shame kind of holding them back?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I feel you so much. Whoever is listening and feeling that, I know exactly how that is. And I think it's good to first become aware of that shame is not yours. So that shame is in the society, it's in the religion, it's in the culture, there are so many layers that have put this shame upon us. So the first step is to really differentiate yourself from that and see that I am not the owner of this shame. It's not mine. And then start little by little. You don't have to like throw yourself in there or definitely don't throw yourself in there and do things that you don't feel comfortable with. You have to like go little by little and see it as an opportunity to learn to make love to yourself, even if that is by just listening to the bird song, or starting to just gently touch yourself, like on the arm, or I don't know, like feeling your hair, like all of these small things. And then when you do that and you move, you can expand and do a little more every time. Every time you have your pleasure ritual, you do a little more maybe. And then if you feel that edge, like there comes some shame or some fear or some guilt, then stop and then you breathe. And you breathe it through. You can breathe 4, counting on the inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhaling for 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then you keep on this breath. Inhaling 4, holding 4, exhaling 8. So that is a way to calm our nervous system. So we can do that right as we feel that edge of fear, shame, or guilt. And then we breathe for maybe, I don't know, 16 rounds or whatever, until you feel the difference. You feel that you kind of like drop and you feel more grounded, more calm. And that is a way to work through those challenges.
And just even listening to you say it and kind of doing just a couple with you, right? I can feel incredible calm and peace in my body. So I hope people that are listening will really make that opportunity to spend that time. Such a beautiful practice, Lovisa. Is there one more thing you'd want to say to guide people that are potentially pregnant or considering it and would like an orgasmic birth?
Yes. You know, I wholeheartedly believe that every woman can have an orgasmic birth. I really deeply believe that. And there might be things in the way, like the shame and fear and guilt and institutions and whatever, like settings and things in our surrounding. But really, the female body is incredible. Incredible. And the pregnancy is such a beautiful time to devote yourself to yourself, to just give yourself so much love and touch yourself in the ways that you've always wanted to be touched, and to reclaim birth as part of the female sexuality. This is where I kind of land in my TED talk also, that is ultimately what it is about. The female sexuality has been suppressed for, you know, centuries, and reclaiming our sexuality is sacred is so important, and that includes reclaiming birth as part of our sexuality. And when we do that, and when we use our pregnancy to do that, by making love to ourselves and by offering ourselves what we need to create a birth space that is truly supportive for us, that is safe, it's private, it's unobserved, then we have the opportunity to have a birth that will empower us, that will make us feel, you know, that we can just that will feel pleasurable. Maybe it will feel in other ways too, but that pleasure is there. It's part of it, and it is a tool. More than anything, pleasure is a tool in birth preparation and in the birth.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lovisa. I always love being with you and hearing your wisdom and your stories. Can you share how people can get in touch with you and about your programs?
Oh yes, of course. The easiest way is to add me on Instagram. So it's Sacred Mom Love. With mom is with a U, M-U-M. And yeah, and I have different programs. I have the Love Birth Portal, which is like the in-depth program where you're in there for a year, and we we meet every month, and then there is pre-recorded material so you can prepare yourself on your own. And then there's the Abode of Love, that is a shorter course, and it's more specified in birth as a rite of passage, and how we can really honor that and use that. And it's also about finding back home to yourself as the source of love. So it's a little more spiritual, that one. And also, I would also like to say that if you are a birth worker or a woman who have had these like an incredible birth experience, I would love for you to share about it, speak about it. And if you feel inspired, you can use the hashtag Love Birth Movement. So that's the one that has been like started going. And of course, hashtag Orgasmic Birth is also a great one to include there. Because I feel like when we gather around a hashtag, it's really powerful. Just look at the Me Too movement. Like, it's about us gathering, us together.
Yes. Thank you so much, Lovisa. All that will be in the notes. So wherever you're listening or watching, look at the notes below for all of those contacts. And thank you again. And thank you to our listeners for always joining us. We hope you'll join us next week on the Orgasmic Birth Podcast.